Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Hope you're all well and safe, warm. Today we are learning Perek Hey of Yoma. I love this Masechta. If I know if Steven said it before, it's a Geschmack of Masechta. Today's shiur is Lila Nishmas, Aaron Achmed Simcha Cohen, Yeshua Mordechai Ben Shefsel, Bracha Sarah Shmuel Lib, Binah Moshe Ben Yosef, and Ruchama Toiva Esther Bas Yaakov David Cohen. And may the Shabbos all have an aliyah. And refuah shlema for Ada Sarah Bas Leah Chana Pesach Bas Yenta, Yisrael Ben Rachalea Rachel Bas Pesach Zelda Avram Yitzchak Ben Risha Chai Bas David Bela, refuah shlema B'Sol Shar Chal Yisrael, and the shchush for Naftali Tzvi Ben Rivka Blima and Aaron Levi Ben Aaron David Halevi. Shefer Bracha Vatzlach and all their endeavors Ben Ruchnis Ben Begashmis. Okay, here we go. Perek Hey Mishnah Aleph. We're continuing with the avodah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, and we were in the middle of discussing the ketores. So we learned yesterday that after Kohen Gadol filled a shovel with coals from the mizbeach, he put the shovel down on the floor near the kodesh. And his next task was to take the ketores out of a different shovel and put it in a golden ladle. So here we go. Perek Hey, Mishnah Aleph. Hatzila es hakaf es hamachta. They brought the empty ladle and the shovel of ketores out to him. V'chafa malachaf naslan nesoch hakaf. He scooped up as much ketores from the shovel as his cupped hands could hold and put it into the ladle. He had to cup both his hands together and scoop up the ketores with them. So, Hagadol lefi gadol, a large man, to a Kohen Gadol that had a larger hands, scooped up a larger amount according to the size of his large hands. Katan lefi katno, and a small man scooped up a small amount according to the size of his small hands. It all went according to the size of the Kohen Gadol's hands. V'kach haisa midasa, and that was the amount of ketores that he burned inside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the Bartanura points out that this clause was added to teach that the Kohen Gadol uses cupped hands later as well inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And after entering the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Kohen Gadol poured the ketores from the ladle back into his cupped hands, and then poured it from his hands into the shovel. So here the Mishnah teaching that just as he was required to take the ketores from its shovel with his cupped hands, so is he required to pour it from the ladle into his cupped hands and not into some other vessel. Very cool. And obviously, we don't use measuring cups on Shabbos Yontif. I'm not sure they could use the measuring cups in the Beit Mikdash, maybe not. But what better way to measure the amount you need than to use your two hands to do it? Okay. He took the shovel of coals in his right hand and the ladle of ketores in his left hand and entered the Kodesh. And he walked through the Kodesh until he reached the opening between the curtains that separated the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, because the Kodesh was a larger room. He walked in the door into the Ulam, then that took you into the Heichal, and then at the back of the where the Heichal was the Kodesh. At the back of the Kodesh was the Peruchis, and there was the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So he walked between the two curtains that separated them. And there was one amma between the curtains. So this was this. Why were there two curtains? Why was one curtain not enough? Because in the first Beis Hamikdash, the Kodesh is separated from the Kodesh Hadashim by a wall that was 1 amma thick. When they built the second Beis Hamikdash, they could not build a wall there because the Kodesh in the second Beis Hamikdash was much higher, and and a wall that was just 1 amma thick would not have been sturdy. So if it was built to that height, in its place, they wanted to hang a curtain. However, you know, it could like they had back in the Mishkan. However, the Chacham did not know whether the amma of space where the wall had stood was part of the Kodesh or the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So if it was part of the Kodesh, then the curtain would have to be hung on the western side of the amma white space, and if it was part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it would be on the eastern side. To solve this problem, they held two curtains, one on each side of the amma white space. So what's the status of in between? Is it Kodesh? Is it Kodesh HaKadosh? Because the Kohen goes walking through there. Rabbi Yossi says, "Lo ha'isa sham ala parochas achas b'vad shedemar." There's only one curtain, as it says in, I guess it's part of Truma. Hivdila haparochas lachem ben hakodesh ben kodesh hakadoshim. Let's just see. This is Parshas Truma. I think that's Parshas Truma. Yeah, Parshas Truma. Yidilo haparochas lachem ben hakodesh hakadoshim, and the curtain shall divide for you between the holy and the holy of holies. The question. So Yossi derives from that pasuk, the Mishkan, that only one curtain is allowed. Therefore, when the second Mikdash was built, they had to make a single curtain that was 1 amma thick. Okay. Continuing on. Hachitzona haisa perufa minadarim. The outer one, meaning the curtain to the east, which was further from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was folded back and fastened at the south to create an opening which the Kohen Gadol could enter the space between the two curtains. And the inner one, the curtain to the west, which was closer to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was folded back and fastened at the north to create an opening through which the Kohen Gadol could enter the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Excuse me. After the Kohen went through the opening at the south, he walked between the curtains until he reached the opening at the north. When he reached the opening at the north, he entered the Kodesh HaKadoshim and turned to the south. He walked southward with the curtain on his left and the ark and the Aron on his right until he reached the northern pole of the Aron. When he reached the northern pole of the Aron, he placed a shovel of coals on the floor between the two poles. He then poured the ketores from the ladle into his cupped hands. Savar es haketores al gabi gachala v'ismali kol habayis kula ashlan. Then he heaped the ketores from his hand onto the coals and waited until the entire chamber was filled with smoke. Yatsa valo b'derech beis knisasa. He then left the kachikachim the way that he entered, and recited a short prayer in the outer chamber in the Kodesh, meaning but he did not prolong his prayer so as not to frighten Klal Yisrael, who, in the event of a delay, they would be afraid that he had died. So the prayer that he said was that this that this year it should that if this year will be hot, rain should be plentiful, and the leadership of the nation should not pass from the house of Yehuda, and your nation Israel should not need each other or other nations for financial support. and the prayers of travelers to stop the rain should not be accepted. That's the nusach according to the Bartanura. So I'm a little, I don't, this Mishnah is kind of perplexing to me because we just went off and said that in Bais Rishon there was a wall. Um, Bais Rishon there was a wall. That was according to the Tanakama, and Rabbi Yossi said that uh, and then the Tanakama then goes and explains that he walked from the north to the south in between two curtains and then went in between the two poles of the Aron. The Aron wasn't in by Sheni. But if you have a wall during Bayis Rishon and you have an Aron, or you have two curtains in Bayis Sheni but no Aron, so I'm not really sure. Um, I don't really understand this business so well, but leave it as it may. Mishnah Beis. Excuse me. If anyone's out there listening in YouTube world, if you come across this Mishnah and you have any insights on this, um, I'd like to know. Okay, Mishnah Beis. Mishnah Aaron Evan Haishasham. Mishnah Aaron. After the Aaron was taken by Nuzaradan, who was the general from Bavel who destroyed the first base of Mikdash. Evan Haishasham Yemos Navim Rishonim. And all that was left, there was a stone which had been discovered before the first base was built in the days of the early Nevi'im, meaning David and Shmuel. Shasiya has the Nikros, and it was called Shasiya, which means the foundation, because it was the foundation of the world. Gavava min haaretz shalosh esbaos, and it protruded three finger breadths above the ground. Valeh noticing, and upon it the Kohen Gadol placed the shovel of coals and burned the ketores. That's where it was, So that's where the Aron was. There by Rishon and by Sheni, that's where the Kohen Gadol did the ketores on the stone. Was this? Is this? I mean, the stone was only discovered in the days of David and Shmuel. Wasn't this the same stone that Adam built his Mizbeach on, and Abraham did the Keres Yitzchak, and Yaakov built his Mizbeach on? I mean, maybe it got covered over since then. But okay, Mishnah Gimel. Meanwhile, in the meantime, going back to the Avodah, when the Kohen Gadol was involved with the ketores, another Kohen was standing in the Azara and stirring the blood of the bull, so that should not. So we're not congealed. We discussed this back in yesterday's Perek. So this Kohen is standing there for a while, keep stirring, don't let go. After the Kohen Gadol finished the service of the ketores and recited his tefillah, he left the Kodesh and resumed the service of the bull. Natal, so Mishnah Gil, Natal as Hadam and Mishayev and Marisbo, he took the blood of the bull from the one who was stirring it and returned it to the Kodesh. Nechlas l'makom shenechlas v'amad v'makom she'amad. He entered the place that he had entered before, meaning the Kodesh HaKodshim, and stood in the place he stood before, between the two poles of the Aron. And he sprinkled some of the blood once upward and 7 times downward in the direction of the ketores, the cover of the Aron. However, he did not aim to sprinkle on the upper part of the ketores or on the lower part. Rather, instead he cast the blood onto the floor the first sprinkling onto a spot far from himself, and the next 7 sprinklings progressively closer to himself, like one who whips a person, starting from the top of his back, working progressively downward. And he would count the sprinkling as follows. Achas. When he made the upward sprinkling, he said 1. Achas v'yachas. Achas v'shtayim. Achas v'shalosh. V'shalosh. Achas v'arba. Achas v'chamesh. Achas v'sheish. Achas v'sheva. And when he made the 7 downward sprinklings, he said 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, and 1 and 7. So the first one was for the one that was up. He was not supposed to count all 8 sprinklings together, 1 through 8. Rather, after counting the 1 upward sprinkling, he started a new count for the 7 downward sprinklings. So this could lead to confusion. However, after counting the first upward sprinkling as 1, he might mistakenly count the first downward sprinkling as 2, and 3, and so on. Therefore, he did this as 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3. Okay. After he completed the sprinklings, he went out of the kachim and put the vessel that contained the blood upon a golden stand in the Kodesh. Mishnah Dalet. Okay, so now they put the golden vessel in the Kodesh. Now he went out to the Chutzner and when he performed the avoda of the he-goat that had been chosen by the lottery as the chatas offered, as the korban chatas. Hivilo es hasayim. This is Mishnah Dalet. They brought him the male goat from Shar Nicanor, where he had been standing since the lottery, to the area between the Mizbeach and the Heichal building. Shachtu v'kiva v'mizak es dama. He shechted it and caught its blood in a bowl. Nichnas l'makom shenichnas v'amad b'makom she'amad. He took the blood into the Kodesh, and once again he entered the kachim, the place that he had entered before, and stood in the place that he had stood before, between the two poles of the Aron. And he sprinkled some of the blood once upward and 7 times downward in the direction of the ketores, the ark cover. And again, he didn't have kavanah to. He didn't take aim to sprinkle on the upper part, or the lower part, or rather, like the shape of a whip. You count the sprinkling as follows: Achas, 1. Achas v'achas, achas v'shtayim, achas v'shalosh, achas v'arba, achas v'chamesh, achas v'sheish, achas v'asher. And he made the 7 downward sprinklings: 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, 1 and 7. After he completed the sprinklings, he went out of the kachim and put the vessel that contained the blood upon a second golden stand in the Kodesh. And then he took the bull's blood from its stand in preparation for the next part of the avoda. So Rabbi Yehuda says, "Lo hayasham ela kain ela kan echa bavad." There was only one stand which held only one bowl. Not till dam hapar v'hiniach dam hasayir. Therefore, he first took the bull's blood from the stand, then he put down the he-goat's blood. So now the story continues. He sprinkled some of the bull's blood toward the part of the curtain of the parochas that's opposite the aron from the outside when standing outside the kachim. Achas the malvish the mata. 1 sprinkling upward and 7 downward. He didn't aim to sprinkle on the upper part of the parochas or the lower part of the parochas. Rather like the shape of a whip. as we explained earlier. And you would count the sprinkling as follows. Achas, one. We did the upper sprinkling, he said one. Achas v'yachas, achas v'shtayim, achas v'shalosh, achas v'arba, achas v'chamesh, achas v'shesh, achas v'sheva. And he made the 7 downward sprinklings. He said 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, and 1 and 7. Nato dama sa'ir, v'niach dama par. After these sprinklings of the dam of the bull, he took the he-goat's blood and put down the bull's blood. And as he did with the bull's blood, he sprinkled some of the he-goat's blood toward the part of the parochas that was opposite the aron from the outside. Achas the 1 sprinkling upward and 7 downward. The low high meskel the hazos low the mata ela kematzlich. And again, he did not aim to sprinkle on the upper part of the parochas or the lower part of the parochas. Rather, he did it in, cast the blood on the foreleg one who whips, as we discussed already. And you continue, and you count the sprinkling as follows. Again, achas. We read the 1 upper sprinkling, he would say 1. Achas v'achas, achas v'shtayim, achas v'shalosh, achas v'arba, achas v'chamesh, achas v'shesh, achas v'sheva. When you read the 7 downward sprinklings, he said 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, 1 and 7. Eira dama, part of the sof dama sire, having finished sprinkling the he-goat's blood toward the parochas, he poured the remaining bull's blood from his bowl into the bowl of the he-goat's blood. So now you combine them. And nasan es hamale berekan, and then he poured the contents of the full bowl into the empty bowl in order to mix them well, like to mix them back and forth. Okay, Mishnah Hey. We have a few more. We have 3 more to go. Hey, Vav and Zion. Okay. So the next step of the avoda is introduced with a pasuk in Vayikra Tezvav Tezvayin is Rachrimos. Okay. Yarsa al Mizbeach Asher l'Dei Hashem, that he shall go out to the Mizbeach that's before Hashem. Meaning, and the pasuk continues, he shall take some blood of the bull and some blood of the he-goat and place it on the corners of the Mizbeach all around. Zeh Mizbeach Hazah. This pasuk refers to the golden Mizbeach, the one that's inside, which was the Mizbeach that's before Hashem in the Kodesh. Hischil Machte Yored. He began to purify the Mizbeach by smearing a line of blood on each of its corners with a downward stroke of his finger. From where did he start? Meaning, from which corner did he apply the blood first? He started from the northeastern corner of the inner Mizbeach and went in the following order. Tzfonis Ma'aravis, Aravis Dramis, Dramis Mizrachis. Northwestern corner, southwestern corner, and the southeastern corner. So this order was required not only for the bull and the he-goat of Yom Kippur, but also for the inner chatas offering. The chatas whose blood was sprinkled on the inner mizbeach. Therefore, the last corner for all of these korbanos was the one in the southeast. So the Mishnah makes an observation. Malcolm shechu maska bechatas al mizbeach hachitza misham hayad gomer al mizbeach hapnimi. The place on the outer mizbeach where one started making the blood applications of a outer chatas korban, namely the southeastern corner, is the place on the inner mizbeach where one finished making the blood applications of an inner chatas korban chatas. Um, Rabbi Lezer says, "Bekomo haya omed umachte." Someone they stood in his place in the northeastern corner and purified the mizbeach by smearing all the corners from there. Kulan haya nosein v'lamata v'mala chutz mizu shehayis lefana. And he applied from bottom to top on all of the corners except this one, which was directly in front of him. Shaleh haya nosein v'lamata where he applied the blood from top to bottom, from top to bottom. Okay, very cool. Mishnah Vav. He's al taharos mizbeach sheva pam. After the Kohen Gadol applied blood to the corners, he sprinkled blood on a clean area on top of the inner mizbeach 7 times. Shiur hadam. Then he went out to the chutzner and poured the remaining blood onto the western side of the base of the outer mizbeach. Likewise, the remaining blood of all the inner korban chatas is poured on the western side of the base of the outer mizbeach. However, the remaining blood of the outer chatas korban, the outer korban chatas, whose blood is applied on the outer mizbeach, is poured onto the southern side of the base, different side. After they were poured onto the base, the bloods of these and those, meaning the inner chatas and the outer chatas, joined in the canal that ran through the Azara and flowed out to Nachal Kidron, where they were sold by the temple treasurers to gardeners to use as fertilizers in their gardens. One who uses them without paying for them benefits from sacred property, which is usher. Okay, and Mishnah Zion. Okay, Kol Ma'aseh Yom Kippur Hamor Allah said this is the last Mishnah for today. This is the rule for all of the avodas Yom Kippur. All the procedures that are mentioned in the preceding Mishnahs in a specific order. If the Kohen Gadol did one procedure before another one, meaning that the second one was done first, he has accomplished nothing, and the earlier procedure is possible, and he must do it again in its correct sequence, correct place, and correct sequence. Hektin dam ha'sa'ir l'dam ha'par, yaksev yazim midam ha'sa'ir l'achar dam ha'par. For example, if he sprinkled the blood of the he-goat toward the parochis before he sprinkled the blood of the bull there, he must sprinkle the blood of the he-goat again after he has sprinkled the blood of the bull. So what? So if the blood of the bull or the he-goat spilled before he finished a set of 8 applications in the Kohen Gadol, as we described. You must bring other blood, meaning they must go out to the chutzner and slaughter another bull or another he-goat and repeat the sprinklings in the Kohen and the kachim from the beginning of the unfinished set. The same is true of the blood of the bull or the he-goat spilled before he finished a set of 8 sprinklings toward the curtain in the kodesh. Here too, he must shecht another animal and go back to the beginning of the interrupted set. And the same is true if the blood, the blood that was mixed between the bull and the goat spilled before he finished a set of 11 applications on the out of his bech. Sorry, the inner mizbech. In this case, he shechs both a bull and a goat, mixes their blood, and uses the mixture to repeat the interrupted set. Shakulan kapara b'fnei asman. However, it is not necessary to repeat any previous set that was already completed, because every set is its own unit of atonement. Once a set has been finished, its purpose has been achieved. Therefore, even if the blood of a new animal is used for the next set, the first set is not repeated. And finally, Relezer, Shimon say, "B'makom shepasak misham hu mask." From the place in the set where he stopped, that's where he starts again. If he started a set and the blood spilled before he finished it, he continues from where he stopped. According to these Tanaim, each sprinkling is a mitzvah in its own right, which, having been done once, need not be repeated. Thank you for joining us. We will continue tomorrow with Perek Vav. If you're still listening at this point in the video and you like today's share, please click share or subscribe to our channel and help us grow. Have a wonderful day. Stay warm and safe.